Hello, my name is Rob Meyer-Kukan from 7 Notes Natural Health in Ann Arbor, Michigan. I'm coming to you today to talk about gongs. But first, a little bit about me. I have a bachelor's degree in church music and 20 some years of experience working in churches and schools in Southeast Michigan, which I have retired from and am now working full-time in natural and holistic health. I'm a licensed massage therapist, a sound healer or sound therapist, a Reiki practitioner, craniosacral practitioner, reflexologist, natural health consultant, and I'm studying to be a naturopath. I have 28 years teaching music, and I still currently maintain a private piano studio, which I will soon be retiring from as well to devote all of my time to the work that I described earlier. This is our 7th year as 7 Notes Natural Health. We originally began our business as the Healthy Musician Institute, working to help performing artists who have repetitive strain injuries, and have broadened our scope to include the variety of activities that we offer to the community today. So let's talk about gongs. First, let's talk about what gongs are. You can see a wide array of gongs behind me here, and we're going to have a chance to meet and to hear each of the instruments in this video. But first and foremost, gongs are, by definition, a percussion instrument. So let's define what is a percussion instrument. So a percussion instrument is an instrument that is where the sound is made by either striking, beating, or scraping. So that is the definition of a percussion instrument. Whereas a wind instrument, say a flute, you blow into it. So that is an instrument where the sound is created by wind or air being forced through the instrument. But these instruments are all percussion instruments. And so because of their nature of being percussion instruments, we need to have some implements or tools to play them. And we sometimes call them mallets or sticks or strikers, or a word that's more commonly being used these days is inviters, based on the teachings of Thich Nhat Hanh, who taught us that rather than playing or striking a bell or a bowl, we invite the sound from the bowl. And that's a philosophy that I really like to espouse in my own practice, my own playing, and in my teaching. And that's something that I really want to encourage folks who are exploring these wonderful instruments that we use for sound therapy to explore in your play and in your therapeutic settings, is take the time to experiment playing the instrument, take the time to experience striking the instrument, and then take the time to play with inviting the instrument to give us the sound that it's going to give. And I think that you're going to find that a more pleasing sound comes from inviting the instrument. When we play these instruments, we want to think about them. If you're a Harry Potter nerd, this imagery will work really well for you, of the idea of when Dumbledore was pulling the memory out of his brain. I always used to tell my handbell musicians when I was working in churches and schools that we were drawing the sound out of the instrument. And it's that similar concept of inviting versus beating or striking the sound into the instrument. We're drawing the sound out. And so in that way, we have even a more physical interaction with the instrument and the sound that's coming out of it as well. It's a little bit of a philosophical change, but I think that it's one that you will really notice a big difference in your end result of the sound that you're getting. The other thing is that one of the world's greatest sound healers and pioneers in the field, Jonathan Goldman, has created and crafted the phrase of frequency plus intent, or frequency plus intention equals healing. And so we always want to have that healing intent when we approach these instruments. So Now that we've gotten a chance to talk about exactly what these instruments are, let's take a little look at the instruments that we have here. Not to brag about my collection or to put on airs that my collection is the perfect collection, but just to give you some examples from what we're going to play with and hear today. And so in the screen, you'll see some shots of these, up-close shots of these instruments. We'll start with the largest gong, which is the Ryan Shellady 7 Notes gong. It's a 36-inch gong, and it is made of nickel and silver. We have a 32-inch bronze wind gong. We have a 30-inch chow gong, which is also bronze. We have a 26-inch bronze sun gong and a 26-inch Paiste symphonic gong, which is made of nickel and silver. We have a dark star gong, which is 26 inches. And then we have a 19-inch Grata Sonora purple spiral stargate gong, which is made of nickel and steel. We have an 18-inch Chinese wind gong. And then we have some smaller gongs, which is sort of a hybrid of a chow gong and a raised center, or sometimes called nipple gong. We have a 16 and a 12-inch in that. And then we have some antique dinner plates that have been turned into gongs. And they're 7 inches and 6 3/4 inches. And those are also made of bronze. So now that I've run through this list of instruments that I'm blessed to have here, let's talk a little bit about classifications or types of gongs. So you heard me saying things like wind gong and chow gong and nipple gong and these types of things. And while this isn't exhaustive, you can generally put gongs into 3 categories. One is a flat gong, which is a Chinese wind gong, or sometimes what we call a Chinese wind gong. And that's the gong you see over my left shoulder here. You also see an example of a Chinese wind gong down here on the right. I'm not sure if that's showing up on the screen or not, but we'll make sure to get a picture if it's not there. The difference in the way that these 2 gongs look is in the tooling that is done afterwards. So the gong here is fully tooled so that all of the black sort of charred color has been removed and the brilliant bronze golden color has been revealed. On the gong over here, there are concentric circles that have been tooled into the gong. And the shape, not the shape, the size of the circles, the spacing of the circles, the number of circles, and how many circles there are, will all play a difference in how the gong speaks. And you'll find that the best way to really familiarize yourself with the differences in what the tooling can do is just by experiencing them and listening to them. So those are flat gongs, or sometimes called Chinese wind gongs. The other another category of gongs is sometimes called a rim gong or a tam tam or a chow gong. And that's anything that kind of has that lip that's kind of curved back. And so you see this gong here, and then the gong that's down here, the Paiste, and the deep star gong over here, or dark star gong over here. Those have that kind of lip to them. And that provides a whole different series of sounds. And then the last family or category is anything that has a raised center, sometimes called a nipple gong. And those have a very specific intent and specific way of playing them, and we'll talk about that as we go through. Excellent. So now that we've kind of gotten through categories, we've gotten a little tour of the instruments, let's talk about some tools. So you'll see here a picture of all of the tools that I have. My list of tools is not exhaustive. It's not every tool that's out there under the sun, but these are the ones that I really love and that I really enjoy working with and playing. Again, you may, when you're looking for these things, if you're trying to find some of these tools online, you may look for mallets, strikers, gong mallets, those types of things. But also be aware that the industry is now starting to use the word inviters more often. And so you'll see here that some of them kind of have fuzzy, soft heads to them. Some of them have more of a focused core and they're covered in fabric. Some of them look like those super high bouncing balls that you used to have as kids with a stick attached to them. Those are called friction mallets or flumies. Not shown here, other instruments or other tools that are often used to play these instruments are bows, like bows that you would use to play a violin or another stringed instrument. Some practitioners are experimenting with, particularly on gongs that have that lip like a chow gong, to see exactly what kind of sonic possibilities are available from running the bow across that lip. So I might encourage you to play around with and see what happens with experimenting with that. Two places where I really love to source my tools and implements for playing gongs are first and foremost Dragonfly Percussion, and then of course the wonderful resources available at Gongs Unlimited. All right, so let's take a little bit of time to talk about playing your gong. So there's some questions, and I'll get to specific questions a little bit later on, but there were some questions about how to play the gong and this, that, and the other thing, and what do you do with your gong to make a full session with it, that type of a thing. And I want to give you a quote that was shared with me, or something as close as possible to the direct quote as possible, that was shared with me. And I don't know if I saw it on social media or a friend shared it with me. I don't know if maybe even someone like Mike Tamburo said it, but the quote is something like, "You can take a lifetime to get to know your gong." And so if you think that because it's kind of this flat piece of metal and maybe you only have one mallet, that you can't really get a variety of sounds out of it, I want to challenge you to play around and see what sonic possibilities are available from your instrument. Because I have experienced and I have learned that that quote is very true. Every time I approach these instruments, there's something surprising and something subtly different that comes out of the instruments. But first and foremost, from my background as a percussionist in my college wind ensemble and playing percussion in the university setting, the thing that I learned about playing gongs, whether it's a chow gong, a wind gong, any type of instrument that is like this nature, is that you have to warm up the instrument. And one of the things that we like about gongs is that they have that beautiful, vibrant sort of splash of sound. And you can sometimes elicit that directly from striking it just once, but you really have to start to get the metal vibrating first to start to elicit those subtle tones from the instrument. So take, for example, a large gong like the one over my right shoulder. It's a lot of metal to get moving. And so if you're expecting to get all of the sounds that you want to hear out of it from one strike, you're going to be disappointed. You've got to warm up your gong, and I'll demonstrate that for you in later on in this video. So the other thing that I want to talk about is that concept of eliciting the various sounds and never quite knowing exactly just where the limits are of the instrument, and that is to play with your instrument. I always say to folks who are starting out and giving sound baths, the best preparation you can do is to know your instruments, to be good friends with them, and to be intimately related to them. And so the best thing that you can do is to know your instruments by playing them, so that you aren't caught off guard if you think you're going to get sort of a wash of sound and you get something that's more of a pure tone because you hit it in one place or another. And by saying that, I am always constantly surprised by the sounds that come from my instrument doesn't mean that they're unreliable. It just means that they've got a lot to speak and a lot to say. Okay, I think that's all for this sort of sit down portion of the video. I'm going to take a quick break, which will be just a second for you guys, and get the camera repositioned so that we can get right up and play these instruments, and you can hear a little bit of the techniques and you can hear a little bit of what they sound like. All right, so let's get to playing these instruments. So I have in my hands here a few different strikers, mallets, inviters. These with the big sort of fluffy fuzzy heads are from Dragonfly Percussion. These are from the Oli Hess or Ollie Hess line. I purchased these from Gongs Unlimited, purchased these directly from Dragonfly Percussion. And so remember, I was saying that you want to warm up your gong. And so what I find as a tool that's really great for doing that is one of these sort of big kind of fluffy mallets. And I'm not sure if that's coming through on my little iPhone camera recording speakers here or not, but you can hear there's just sort of a gentle hum. I can guarantee you that in the room, you can hear that, and furthermore, you can feel that. So priming or warming up your gong is gonna be just gently tapping with a big fluffy mallet. Okay, Rob, big fluffy mallets are expensive. What if all I have is something like the green mallet you have in your hand? Well, the technique is the same. It's just a gentle tapping. Now, I should have started by saying, how do we hold these implements and how do we hold these tools? The way I like to hold them is just with a simple grip here, sort of like a drummer or a percussionist would hold their mallets or their sticks. And so the strength or the pressure is between my thumb and my index finger, and the mallet's kind of sitting sort of cradled there, and these bottom three fingers are just kind of here to kind of be along for the ride. And you can adjust your thumb, whether you're kind of more sort of wrapped around or up along the shaft, always being aware of ergonomics and body position and posture of your hand so that it doesn't get tired or labored and you don't hurt yourself. All right, so that's a little bit about that. Let's move over to this wind gong here then, and let's demonstrate that sort of priming or warming up the gong as well. Again, it's just a very light striking of the instrument just to get it vibrating so that it's already set and going. And while this one's going, let's just talk about some basic technique. So just like any percussion instrument, a right-left repeated pattern or alternated pattern is gonna be your kind of go-to. So now that this is kind of moving, it's vibrating, it's starting, I'm just gonna alternate left and right. And you'll notice the sound changed when I came in, when I went down, and when I went up. So depending on where you strike, you could get a variety of different sounds. Now I'm changing over to these Dragonfly Percussion strikers. And they've got a little bit more of a finer point to their sound. They're not quite as fluffy and soft, so they're not as muted. So that allows you to really build the sound that you're getting out of the instrument. So each instrument has its own voice, and each instrument has its own sound to it. One of the questions that someone asked was about flumies and friction mallets. And so they kind of look like this, or you can buy this kind of curly Q one. And these, again, the main tip I want to share with you is in holding these. These are the ones that allow you to create sort of those gorgeous sighs or whale or dolphin sounds. And I have a really limited supply of these. I haven't invested too much time and money into these, not for any other reason than just that I've been really enjoying playing with my mallets. But if I were to do that same technique with the smaller or even smallest ball, you're gonna notice that the pitch changes. So this one kind of has a bit of a lower tone, whereas this one's gonna have a little bit of a higher tone. So think about, like in a piano, a shorter string's gonna have a higher sound, a lower string's gonna have a lower sound. So that's kind of the difference of what you're getting here. Some of these that kind of look like lacrosse balls on big wooden sticks would create a really low, rumbly, grumbly sound. Some teachers instruct that you should only use these friction mallets going across the grain or across the tooling that's been done. When I was first taught to use these, I was taught to experiment and find out which worked best with your instrument. So that's what I would encourage you to do. Okay, let's then give you a little bit of a chance to hear some of these other instruments. So I mentioned earlier that the tooling of the gong is going to play a difference in the sound that's produced. So you notice that that has a pretty mellow tone, but it also can have a really big, splashy, bright sound. So with these concentric circles, you're going to hear a difference. And even changing mallets will lead to a different tone. The Peisty gong has a really gorgeous tone to it. It's very quick to get to that sort of splashy sound that we like. I'm not sure if I'm still in the camera, but the Dark Star gong is very similar to the Peisty. This Chow gong I have over here, I'll put a picture of it, I'm sure I'm out of camera. Has a very splashy sound as well. This smaller 18-inch gong has a really beautiful, bright sound. It's very similar to the Grata Sonora gong. So let's talk for a minute about these nipple gongs. Now these are a little bit of a hybrid because it has that curved lip that comes back. It started life, I'm told, as a chow, and then it had this popped out center put in. And anything that has a popped out center, you're only going to play it by striking the center. And again, notice we're pulling or drawing the sound out of the instrument, not beating it in. Okay, so that's a little bit about what each gong sounds like and the basics of getting started playing them. Let's answer a few of your questions. So Phyllis asked, how do you fill an hour with one gong? Well, that's a really good question. How do you play a concert on just one piano? Or how do you play a concert on just one instrument? It would be difficult to have a concert with just one instrument that had just one note. But I want to challenge you to stop thinking about the instrument as having only one note and really play around with the different techniques of, the different types of strikers or inviters and different techniques of those strikers or inviters for bringing out the different sounds. I also want to challenge you to think about the quote that has been shared by multiple musicians, but has oftentimes been shared by Suren Srentha, who said that the magic of sound therapy happens in the silence between the sounds. Mozart said that the magic of music was in between the silence between the notes, and there have been other composers who have said the same thing. And so, not using silence to a point where it is monotonous, or maybe your participants are wondering if you've checked out, but play around with the subtleties of the sound and allow the space to really fill, and then allow it to fully clear, and then start in with something new. That would be one technique I would sort of play with. Yes, using flumies, mallets, different ideas and different techniques, do's and don'ts. I hope that's helpful, and for one way to kind of approach it. Hopefully, you were able to see that you can get a variety of sounds out of this instrument, and play around with that and see what you get. Let's see, Jennifer said, I'm interested in playing a gong for a more gentle, mellow sound, whale sounds, wind, waves. How would you demonstrate for us? So hopefully in the demonstration of the sounds, you were able to see there of some of those. I'll put a few more clips in here at the end so that you can hear some really gentle sounds, and then we'll allow to do one sort of big splashy sound. It's difficult when recording and using iPhones and things like that, but we'll get you an opportunity to hear all of that, and sort of reference how I spoke about Phyllis's question about that as well, because there are very gentle sounds that can come from these instruments. Just the sound that's created from warming up or priming the instrument can be really nice, particularly if you're combining or pairing instruments. I really love to do just sort of a gentle, subtle roll in sort of that mode of priming the instrument, and then play some singing bowls, some metal bowls, particularly using some mallets for a more percussive and bell-like ringing tone, and then come back and sort of create another layer, an undercurrent of these undulating waves coming from the gongs. Shelby asked, what about striking the center? There are varying philosophies on this. I will oftentimes gently strike the center for sort of a hollow kind of drum-like effect from the gong. I think that's fine and that's okay. The thing you really want to be aware of is the energy and intention you're putting into confronting your gong. Again, you want to keep that philosophy that you're inviting the sound from the instrument, not beating it into it. The other thing you want to do is you want to be conscious of when you've got your gong kind of going and it's made that kind of gentle roll, you've built up to this big crashing, splashy, bright, beautiful sound. You want to avoid hitting the center of the gong at that point because there's too much vibration happening in the instrument. At least this was the guidance I was given, and it can cause some things to happen. Various things and various folks have said different things about you. You can send your gong out of tune and that type of thing. But I would venture to say that you could send your gong out of tune by striking the edge of it or the rim of it too hard as well. So we need to approach the instruments in a way that is respectful and in a way that will also give the desired effect and the intent of providing space that is healing for our clients, the participants in our class or sound bath, and ourselves. All right. I'd be more than happy to answer any other questions that maybe I've missed or some things that kind of come up from the video. If you would put that in the comments below, or you can email me. I will put my email address at the bottom of the video, and you can, I'd be happy to continue the conversation. I do want to highlight a couple of resources. There are 2 books by Sheila Whitaker. First is called Sound Healing with Gongs, a gong book for beginners. This is an excellent resource. And then another book by Sheila Whitaker, In the Heart of the Gong Space, The Gong as a Spiritual Tool. This is another really great resource. Again, you can see the difference in the size of them. This is a great primer to get started. If you want a great overview and just a little bit of information, if you want to do a deeper dive and really dig in, this is another really wonderful book for doing that. And then there's a book by Philip McNamara called Gongs and Tam-Tams, a guide for percussionists, drummers, and sound healers. This too is a really great beginner book that gives you all sorts of information. It'll talk about the history, different brands and things that are out there and available. Talks a little bit about playing techniques, and the thing that I really like at the end is it gives you permission to experiment and experience the instrument for yourself. The other resource that I have found to be really, really wonderful is a blog or a website called The Way of the Gong, and let's find out who does that. Michael Bettine or Bettine, and I will put all of that information in the comments or available for you here as well. Really wonderful resources out there, and I hope that that's helpful for you. So enjoy these extra additional clips of the different sounds that are available, a little bit of a free flow of me playing the gongs, and I hope you have a really wonderful day. See you later. Bye-bye.